Canadians are going bankrupt and keeping their homes? Is it even possible that some Canadians are gaming the system by going bankrupt and managing to stay in their homes at the same time? Those same homes that maybe they paid way too much for in the peak? Well, the answer to that question is, yeah, some of them are doing just that. Because sometimes you can legally go through a bankruptcy and keep your home. And other times, as part of filing for your bankruptcy, you will be required to sell your home and use that equity that you have stored there to pay back some of your debts. And since the top 2 videos on this channel and the most viewed episode ever of my weekly podcast titled The Tom Story Show are all about how Canadian homeowners are potentially going bankrupt, I am long overdue for a video with bankruptcy in the title. So sit right back, subscribe, and cash in on the like button so I can get on with today's video. Now, I'm not a bankruptcy trustee, but in my career, I have dealt with my fair amount of home evaluations and sales in regards to those homeowners going into bankruptcy or filing a consumer proposal. Now, when someone files for bankruptcy, most often it's not the result of heavy consumer spending. And no, it's not paying too much for their home. But in fact, often it's the result of, number 1, a failed business, or number 2, a very successful business where the business owner sort of forgot to pay their taxes. And when the CRA comes knocking, well, that successful business often turns into, number 1 again, a failed business. But no matter if your business fails or if you borrowed too much to buy your dream home, maybe you signed up for a pre-sale condo or 3, or if you just couldn't say no to that higher trim model at the dealership. Or it could have been that you thought credit cards were just free money. If you owe a lot more debt than you can service, you might consider filing for bankruptcy, meaning walking away from your debts, or a consumer proposal, which is a restructuring or possibly lessening or maybe even fixing your current debts. Well, this is a place that many people find themselves in, not only in today's economic climate, but in every climate. And every time I've evaluated a home for its current market value as a result of a bankruptcy, the owner always, and I mean always, wants to keep their home. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. And this is where some owners are trying to game the system. You see, if you have equity in your home that you bought for $500,000 10 years ago, and today your home is worth $1 million, and say maybe you refinanced a few times and now you owe $600,000 on your mortgage, but when your business went bad and you ended up owing a creditor, say, $300,000. Well, in this case, you have plenty of equity to pay your debts. And although you might not like it, the solution here is to either refinance the home and pay the debt, which is highly unlikely because of today's stress test and refinancing rules, and the fact that you have already proven you probably can't pay that debt. Or the more realistic solution is to sell your now $1 million home. Then you pay off your mortgage for, say, that $600K and your debts for the remaining $300. And don't forget those pesky realtors and lawyers for another $25,000 or $30,000. And at the end of the day, you end up clearing off your debt, and maybe possibly you've got about $70,000 left over, which is enough to either re-enter the market at a much lower price point and probably a lot higher leverage, or maybe you can invest that money while you rent to get back on your feet. And this, selling, is probably the best option because it will keep your credit hopefully intact. But if you have no equity in your home, you might be able to stay. The reason you are not forced to sell is that, well, you have to live somewhere. And as long as your mortgage holder isn't the one that you are missing payments on, well, then they are more than happy to let you keep paying. Yeah, if you don't have any equity and you can make your mortgage payments, you will probably be able to keep your home, which is actually a very good thing for when the market takes off again. But this is where the issue begins. Let's now use a different example. Let's say you bought that $1 million property at the peak of the market in March of 2022, and you put down 10%, which actually would make your purchase price $999,999 or less, but that's besides the point. Let's say now your property has declined in value I don't know, to $950,000. Well, if you want to keep your house, you've probably still got some equity there to work with. So your creditors are likely going to push for the sale of the home. And this is why most homeowners going through a bankruptcy won't get a proper appraisal on their home. And often they reach out to a friendly real estate agent that they know to, let's call it, fake a market evaluation at, I don't know, $875,000. So it appears like there's no equity. But bankruptcy trustees aren't stupid, and they are not fiduciaries, meaning that they are not there to represent the seller of that home like, say, a lawyer or a realtor would. And they will often likely pay for their own appraisal and find out the property's true value. Let's say the actual $950,000. Sorry, homeowner, in this case, you probably have to sell. But now remember, this is where some homeowners are starting to play games and trying to game the system. For example, you know that homeowner that just declared their home with the help of their realtor friend was worth $875,000. Well, they go back to that same agent and they list the property for that same $999,999, a price that everyone knows they are not going to get. Because one, if they did, they would end up with most of their initial investment back minus, say, realtor and lawyer fees. But two, remember, they don't actually want to sell because in today's market, home prices in most areas are declining, meaning the longer the homeowner waits to sell, the less the property is worth. And remember that if they can get to a spot where the actual value is less than what they owe or would net in a sale, they may be able to keep the home. Now I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would they want to do that? Well, the obvious is that it's their home and they don't want to move and possibly have to uproot their family, which might then lead them to some sort of public embarrassment when their friends and family find out that they have gone from owning that beautiful new place just a year or two ago to now renting just a couple of years later. But if they can exclude the property from the insolvency, they solidify keeping a home even with severely damaged credit. And although the market is down right now from where it was, they own real estate and the creditors have no claim to that property, as its value will inevitably increase when the market recovers. And if they do file for bankruptcy and don't get to keep the home, their chances of owning a home again in the future decrease a lot because it will show up on their credit report for a long time. So let me know what you think of these folks that are trying to game the system. And if you think it's right that someone can default on their loans or debts and still keep their homes, particularly if they could clear up some of their debts right now and are just hoping the market decreases enough that they don't have to sell. And at the same time, if you find yourself in a tough spot and you're trying to reestablish your footing, and you live in the Surrey or Fraser Valley of BC, and you might need to sell in order to make your plan work, well, you can book a call with me using the link in the description below at a time that works best for you. Thank you for subscribing, bankrupting the like button, and we'll see you in a couple of days.